be looking at 2020 and beyond, navigating Claris transformations and innovations in the post-pandemic era. So what does that even mean? First of all, my name is Mary Hodges. It is my pleasure to lead the return of the Indiana FileMaker Developer Group hosted by DB Services. Thanks for joining us, those that are here. A little bit about me. I've been a FileMaker user for about 18 years, developer for something like 12 years is when I started doing development, and here at DB Services for just over 4 years, basically the period we are going to be doing a high-level overview on. I'm currently a senior developer and leading internal training initiatives here under a new role of training director. I know a lot of folks that are here. So for the few of you that I haven't met or don't recognize, a little bit about me. I've got a few cats at home. I've got a ballet background. I actually started working with FileMaker when I was at a dance bar business. And I don't know, I like listening to Hot Ones where they eat the spicy wings and talk to celebrities. It's a good time. Recommend if you're looking for multitasking entertainment on your drives home or washing dishes. Okay, so today we're gonna do basically just a warm reboot. Welcome back to DB Meetups, hosted at Indiana FileMaker Developer Group. For those that I don't know, if you want to either turn on your audio for a moment or use the chat or the thumbs up, have you joined us in the past at older developer groups for Indiana? Anyone? Is everyone new?
Greg Wilmore. I've listened to Kevin for years and years and years, and I've always enjoyed the insights that I get from the group. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. All right. Back at 2020, it's a little bittersweet probably for everybody for a whole lot of different reasons. I had just moved to Indiana, so it's personally very significant for me in addition to everything else that went on. And obviously that's right before the pandemic started, a lot of things have changed dramatically. So even though we were still doing meetups in 2020 and even into 2021, mostly virtual, obviously, it's been a while since we've had one. So we're going to do that big overview, more or less starting with January 2020. And then I'm going to just cherry pick some features that have come out that I really think are special for developers. Some of them are really small, some of them are much bigger. We could probably, there's so much that's come out. We could do probably some cherry picking, greatest hits of new stuff for the next who knows how long. So it's definitely not everything, but a few things that I thought would be of interest that you may have missed in the shuffle of everything that's come out. And yeah, and then we'll look ahead to future events and see what makes sense for everybody that is interested. Great. Okay, so who we are DB Services. Just a moment. This is a picture of our team here at Claris Engage this past February. It's not everybody, but there's a good number of us. I'm in there, Kevin's in there. And this was this past February, this was the first Engage in-person official Claris developer event since 2019. DB Services, we're a Platinum Claris partner and FileMaker Growth Partner of the Year for 7 consecutive years. We've worked with hundreds of clients, large and small, to develop efficient, low-code custom apps. And our mission is to make organizations more efficient and effective through digital transformations while offering superior service and expertise. See, there's something in the chat here. I just want to pull that up. Oh yeah, hi, Greg. Okay, and then just a little about the developer group since we are kicking this back off. IFTG is a forum for FileMaker users and developers to come together to share ideas and help each other. So DB Services has been the proud host of IDF since 2012, at least, possibly maybe even a little longer. We are going to be meeting regularly moving forward about once a quarter. And we're actually going to do our next event in July. We're going to focus more on a single topic, being AI. So I know there's a lot of interest and questions and confusion about that. So we definitely want to get folks involved, and I think there'll be a lot to talk about. Also, as we move through things today, please consider if there's something that you would like to see as a topic, either something we sort of skim over and like to do a deeper dive on. If you have an idea for something you'd like to see as an event, or if you would like to present, let us know. This is a community endeavor, even though we're hosting. So, we want to know what is of interest and what would be meaningful to you folks. And please spread the word. I know we're a small group today, but for your colleagues and friends and associates, especially in Indiana, but of course we're virtual now, please spread the word, and we'll get these kicked off. All right, and I'm going to pass it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Mary. I will be very brief. I will not have the mic very long here. I know we're trying to catch up for 3-4 years here, and so that's my job here, just to do a little high-level overview, then Mary would take it over from here. For those who don't know me or have never met me, I'm CEO, founder of DB Services, and very proud of our background and uproot in the Claris community, or FileMaker community, as it was Claris FileMaker, Claris again. So happy to be here. Happy to continue to share our thoughts and leadership and get people helping each other. So Mary said she likes a certain YouTube channel, so I'll have to give my YouTube. I like John Boy Media. I don't know if anybody's ever watched him. He's a great lip reader when it comes to sports and baseball and things like that. So I have a lot of fun with John Boy. So if you've not ever watched some John Boy, go watch some John Boy. Go ahead, Mary. When we were at Claris Engaged, this was one of the slides that came up that I enjoyed. Maybe that's my engineering side coming out. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this slide and what it meant to me and in this journey for the past 3-4 years. Naturally, I think all work places have gone through some of the most difficult management times ever seen in business, in my view, outside of potentially trying to have a business in war. That would probably be a little bit more difficult. But when the pandemic came, we really all had to become a work from home workplace to the best of our ability to keep our talent and to continue to be prepared for the future. So right around 2019 was when Claris, the last conference with Claris, and that in that conference they announced Claris, right? We all knew it as FileMaker, and they announced the branding of Claris at that time. So that was pretty transformational. And then along the way, Claris Connect, Claris Studio. Mary will talk a little bit more about those, but you'll notice the dotted lines, the vertical dotted lines here, showing how Claris said, hey, we're not going to be doing waterfall releases, right? They've learned from other companies out there, right? How many times do your apps update on your phone? How many times is Chrome updating? It's constant. When do they update? When they need to, right? When they can. When do they get value to the customer? As soon as possible. So they really embraced that concept. They went from waterfall to agile, and then you started to see the releases start to come out. So there wasn't just one clean release as you saw in the past. Very much you saw the minor releases, and then the version history, or version the updates for bug fixes and so forth. So around, and you'll notice a couple big highlights here, right? Some of these minor releases didn't feel so minor, right? I know our staff manages clients very well from a 19.4 milestone, because that had a lot of compatibility with older operating systems, and then boom, you had to be on different operating systems in 19.6. So there's a lot of stories inside of all these minor releases and how you manage them. On our website, we try to write articles, or we do release articles on these new versions as they come out. Each one of these minor releases had their own article written, sharing our thoughts with the community across the product lines. So the big picture is, you'll notice that the years and the numbers don't match. I think it's easy to think 20 is 2020, and then all of a sudden, starting in FileMaker 2023, they started to call the product 2023, but behind the scenes, the version was 20.1. So just be aware of the future means multiple cadences and releases. If you really try to look at it closely, I don't know, 2-3 releases, minor releases a year. That seems to be the cadence or the pattern I'm seeing, maybe 2. So moving forward, I know that we have a new version coming out at some point, so you'll see another major version release. So a couple things inside of these things, I cannot highlight them all, but Linux was released, a Linux server, so that was pretty big for organizations that put things up in the cloud or have an infrastructure or an IT department that support Linux. So that was a huge release. And then in addition, the consistent release and improvement of the product line, right? The Claris Connect, Claris Studio, and then they released what's called the platform bundle, where you can get all 3 for 25% extra on your license and have unlimited usage of it. So those are some things. If you're not using or exploring those things, definitely sign up, start to play with Claris Connect, start to play with Claris Studio. But that creates the entire suite. So I'll let Mary talk a little bit more in depth about it, but this slide really shows cloud, the improvements of cloud. I mean, we went from Amazon, where you're doing your own hosting, to FileMaker Cloud as an official product. And then you can see the 2.18 and so forth, 2.19, 2.20. So the continual evolution of the platform, being cloud friendly, being multiple different product lines with Connect and Studio, all tying them all together in a unified product family. So really a lot of innovation over the course of these years across all of these different products. I think all of us would love it to be a little faster in some cases with some of these features and things that we give them feedback on. But there's a lot to support, a lot of things from a standpoint of Windows, Mac, Linux, plus cloud. There's a lot going on there at Claris. So hopefully everybody has enjoyed these versions and kept up to date. If not, definitely do it. They're all still the same file format, and it's just really about getting the maximum product line. These features make development easier. Mary will talk about some of those improvements, but in order to really get that value, staying current's important. We had to make a jump on 19.6, I know, to be compatible on our operating systems. So, but now we are. Mary, I will turn it back over to you.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to jump us right ahead here. So we just looked at that really granular map of all these little minor releases. This is the reverse of that, right? This is the big zoomed out view that includes the entire Claris suite of products. So, again, going all the way back to where we were at the start of 2020, we had FileMaker, and then over this period of the last 4 years, they have launched Claris Connect and Claris Studio. And those platforms, those new products have, they're building robustness over time, right? And I want to emphasize here, I don't speak for Claris. It's not going to be a marketing pitch on these different products. But I did just want to highlight their existence. This is the current suite. If you heard about Claris Pro maybe and thought, hey, I should check that out, that's actually deprecated and it's not something that we're going to focus on. So no need to jump into that. Jump ahead here. Claris Connect is essentially a plug and play tool for API connectors for Claris. It's a separate product that integrates with FileMaker and it can simplify your API integrations. The first version was launched in 2020. And then toward the end of last year, a free tier is available to help bring developers in to start using it more. And they're definitely the pace of thinking back to that FileMaker release cadence. Seems like the pace of Claris Connect is also speeding up. So in addition to the free tier, they have custom connectors that were introduced last year. And it seems like more and more this product is increasing in robustness into something that can be used for more and more cases. Claris Studio is another new Claris offering. This actually launched in 2022. These are web tools that basically, my big high-level takeaway is that there are things you can do with Claris Studio in terms of UI, in terms of layout, not layout, things that you cannot do in FileMaker layouts in terms of UI features and web responsiveness. So that launched in 2022. And again, a free tier of Claris Studio is now also available with an active FileMaker 2023 license. And at least based on what we saw at Claris Engage in February, it seems like that cadence and robustness of the product is also increasing to, is picking up. Let's see. As Kevin mentioned at the top, the FileMaker release and development cycle has changed. So you saw the cutoff before, went from waterfall releases to agile, beginning those iterative releases in 2020. If you have not checked out the Claris roadmap, I have a link here. You can also just Google Claris roadmap. Highly recommend it. There's about a 15-minute video identifying the direction of the company, strategy to get there. It's partly a marketing presentation, but it's definitely of interest, I think, to developers in terms of how they're thinking about this product, how they're approaching enhancements, new functionality, integration. It's definitely worth watching if you have not. And then in 2024, this year, right around Claris Engage, they also have published a backlog, which I've got a link here as well. Again, I encourage you to check this out if you haven't taken a look. Basically, there's more transparency about what they're actually working on and how it is prioritized for release. So even though we don't know the exact details of what's coming next, we know basically the top priorities for release that are expected in short term. So
Mary,
again,
I also
yes.
threw in the chat the Claris Connect release
Perfect.
notes, so you can see all of what's coming. It's pretty rapid too on that side.
Yeah. So basically, again, just high level zooming out, moving to iterative releases has allowed for a much more rapid release of new features, right? So as Kevin was pointing out earlier, 19.4 to 19.6, a lot of major changes. I have to assume maybe in the past that might have been a whole new, a whole new number, but there's a lot less downtime in between these major updates. Okay. Looking ahead, again, this is somewhat taken from what we saw at Claris Engage in February, what's been shared as part of the backlog and the roadmap, excuse me. in general, the direction seems to be more integration between the Claris products and more functionality, especially on the newer products. And for sure, a FileMaker focus on performance, scalability, and reliability. I'm going to touch on that a little bit, especially as it relates to server. And then looking even farther ahead, my take is that there is a real focus, obviously, on AI, but specifically on just making sure that FileMaker is equipped to be relevant in a quickly changing technology landscape. And again, I don't speak for Claris. I'm not making a marketing pitch, but I will say what I remember, for those of you, I think there's probably a lot of longtime developers here. It reminds me a lot of when JSON functions were introduced, which I think was 16. And, a lot of people were like, what even is this? And the people that knew what it was were like, thank goodness. And that kind of feels like what this is. It's basically a way for FileMaker to natively handle and leverage and play nice with other technologies that are increasingly standard. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. Welcome our new guest who's joined us. Before we move on, I did just want to take an informal poll. I know we're a small group. Again, you can turn off your mic and say something. You can throw something in the chat, throw up a hand. Where would you say you are as a user developer? How much do you pay attention to some of these new releases? Everything we're saying, is this old news to you? Is this new news to you? Who here feels like, yeah, I'm on the cutting edge. I am with it. I've got, I've got my inside ear at the Claris headquarters. Anybody in that ballpark? Anybody who was like, yeah, I may not have all the details, but I try and keep up. I feel pretty up to speed. Crickets.
I'll go ahead
Hey.
and jump in that camp. Hey, it's Brendan.
Hey,
long-time
Brendan.
listener. Yeah,
Good to see you.
doing some FileMaker these days, and so yeah, I thought I'd check and see what's going on.
Nice, awesome. Well, thanks for saying hi. Yeah. So, have you played with any of the new features? You're using 20? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I am using the latest version. Trying to think if there's any fun features that I've actually used, and mostly been just relying on the things that came out a year or two ago.
Cool.
Layout calculations was fun.
Agreed. That may or may not be in this presentation later. Anybody else kind of in the same boat of like, yeah, I'm up to date, but I'm not using everything that's available? That resonate for anybody else? Anybody who's brand new or just has, no idea what's been going on lately with Claris? You don't have to out yourself. I'm just trying to get a sense. All right. So we're going to get into it. Calling these hidden treasures, or maybe not so hidden treasures, depending on who you are, what you've been working with. Again, this is my sort of curated takeaway of hero workarounds, things that make you go, hey, we could do that now? I had no idea. That's gonna save me the same, 5 lines of code I always write, or the thing I try to steer people away from because it's gonna triple the size of their project. Some of these are pretty big. So let's go ahead and get started on some things you may have missed. Perform script on server with callback. Got a little diagram here. What happens is user presses a button that calls their little script. Script says, hey, server, go run the script for me. And then, of course, in the past, we've always had 2 options. We can wait for it to finish, or we can just hope that it worked and the user has no idea sort of what happened next. So what we can do now is after that server script runs, or during that server script, we don't have to wait for it to finish. The client can finish their script. They go on, they start doing something else. That takes us down to this little square at the bottom that says they're continuing their work. They're no longer tied up waiting for a response. And then when that server script completes, it calls a callback script on the client session that can notify the user, hey, that thing that you asked for, that's done. Pretty cool. So this is pretty new. It originated in 20.1, so that's that new FileMaker 2023 product. Again, runs a callback script on FileMaker client after the script completes, after the server script completes. That gives us a way to notify the user in session that their script is complete. You don't have to do, an email or some sort of other notification that involves sending an alert through an external system. For example, we're generating an intensive report that would maybe get emailed so that the user doesn't have to wait for it. Now they can just get a notice that says, hey, your report is ready. And maybe, do you want to go retrieve it? And that could take them to a layout. So one little comment I have, this may be obvious to a lot of folks here, but I want to just call it out. Wouldn't want to build a, this is a script that's, or excuse me, this is a step that's very powerful and that really, at least to my mind, resolves a lot of issues, simplifies our process, but it can also be, horribly misused. Wouldn't want to put any required behavior in a callback script that's going to complete a process. That user could log out before the server script finishes, and then that callback script would never run. Has anybody here been working with perform script on server with callback that you want to identify yourself? I'll keep rolling. Okay.
Mary, does that
Yeah.
also is that useful for Go?
I believe it's compatible with Go. I don't have the documentation up in front of me.
I was just curious because I know Go has more likely to have disconnects, right? Because
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, like I say, anything that is a necessary follow-up action, I would not build with this step, because yeah, if the user's disconnected or if they just log off, then that's not going to run. All right, layout calculations. Brendan's favorite. I think this is probably the one that is most familiar to a lot of people. This is pretty exciting. It's a little thing, but you can put a calculation directly on a layout. Do not have to define a field. You don't have to set up a global merge variable. You don't have to use a button bar. One thing to note as a potential drawback, depending on your use case, this is basically text. It gets evaluated as a calculation. The way to think of it is text wrapped in the evaluate function. That's basically how it works, at least as I understand it. Again, based on some of the things we saw at Claris Engage. This also means that there's no references that are going to show up in a DDR, and it's not something that can be used in another context in the way that a field or a global variable is available in different parts of the system. This is basically just literally text on a layout that gets evaluated as a calculation. Anybody spent any time with this little snippet from Claris documentation? Hoping this will be familiar to a few folks. I feel like many hours have been lost to trying to get this one piece of functionality in an otherwise relatively straightforward process for developers at some point in their life. And it would seem that folks joining the platform more recently are just never going to know that pain. So this is a small thing with with a big impact, in my opinion. This actually goes all the way back to FileMaker 19, so this is not that new. But if you missed it, you should know that it's here. This gives you that relief from your if, case, or substitute statements to handle file paths. You can convert from Mac OS, iOS, iPadOS, and Linux paths, Unix-like, Windows paths, URL paths, into that FileMaker path, basically handling all of this logic. Is just, you don't have to worry about it. The periods, the whole thing. It's beautiful. Okay. Moving on, get live text. So I used as our example here that that image from before, the FileMaker release cadence. This is a function that you can apply to a container field. In this example, I've got that release cadence in a container field. We'll read the image into text. So this originated in 19.5.1. This is one of the initial offerings on the FileMaker platform of optical character recognition functionality. That's OCR. Turns text from an image in a container field using a language-specific text recognition algorithm, so you can specify what language it should be. Like any text recognition technology, obviously this is imperfect, right? But one of the big things that I see as a great advantage here is that at least there is some built-in functionality native to FileMaker. You don't need a plugin, you don't need an external service, a paid service, and that, you know, if this solves your problem, if this solves the need for your project, then now it's built in. It is pretty limited functionality in that obviously it's an Apple device only feature, right? It's using an Apple algorithm. So we're just talking Mac, iPhone, iPad. Also, it only applies to images, ... right now. And again, I don't speak for Claris. It seems based on some sort of unofficial indications that they may be expanding this kind of native text reading into potentially other file formats. PDF would be an obvious highly requested function. Okay, so now I'm gonna take a bigger bite. Looked at some kind of relatively small features, mostly little functions and that perform script on server with callback. Want to take a slightly bigger view on the new transaction script steps because it is pretty major. So this originated in FileMaker 19.6.1. Is everyone, let's see. So let's just talk about what is a transaction, right? I imagine this is familiar to most, if not all, people here, but I'm not going to make too many assumptions since I don't want to put folks on the spot. Transaction means that we want an all or nothing result, right? So it's the kind of thing that's usually used for batch updates or something where you want to update a record and then all of its related records, for example, an invoice and all of its line items at once. Or if you are, you know, needing to go over a batch of records and make sure that they all get updated or none of them get updated. We've been able to achieve this functionality, right? That basic transactional output using various scripting and relationship methods. There's a few variations, but the basic functionality is, or basic principles are the same. I'm not going to go through how to create a transactional script using, sort of more old school methods, but this functionality can be done with some limitations even before 19.6.1. But, there are some, in addition to the new steps making it much easier to set up a basic transaction, there are some critical new features that you could not do with previous methods of transactional scripting and some pretty big implications. So I want to spend just a little bit more time on that. here's what they look like. And this is a very simple script I wrote to try and be pretty easy to read. Transactional steps have an open and close, kind of like a loop and loop pair. So you have an open transaction and a commit transaction. Those are highlighted in blue here. And then again, kind of like a loop structure where you have an exit loop if you get like a sort of conditional escape valve. There's a similar option in transactions. You have a revert transaction that you can insert anywhere into your transaction based on whatever validation or error handling you want to have. And then as you would expect for anybody who's basically familiar with transactional processes, those record changes that you're making as you're looping over records, they are not saved until that commit transaction step at the very end. So everything inside of your transactional bracket, what's highlighted here in the blue, is basically written to a temporary file and not saved throughout the system. Is everybody with me so far? Does anybody want to ask any questions before I move on? I've got more to show. I just want to make sure folks are following. Okay. Very good. So a few comparisons here. Old methods of transactional scripting, you have to stay on the current window, and that is true of the new way as well. The new way is very much window specific. Then things start to get apart. The old way, you have to stay on a current record, right? You have to keep that record open, and you do everything through relationships. You're kind of hacking a record locking and native commit behavior by staying on that one record. In the new transaction steps, you can change records. You can change layouts. You can perform finds. You can do all the, sort of former big no-nos of transactional scripting. You can also batch update records, as in replace field contents. There's a few more. I'm saving it because I'm waiting for a big dramatic reveal in case folks here aren't familiar with it. There's also in the new transactional scripting, I've got a big asterisk here because it's a bigger topic than we have time for, but there are some built-in auto revert on certain kinds of errors, hence that asterisk. So there's definitely a little nuance to the error handling in the transactional script steps. We're not going to get into that, but there is some built-in auto revert. And the only thing that I'm aware of that you could do with previous methods of transactional scripting that you cannot do with the new method is you cannot have more than one transaction open at once per session. So even though it's window specific, you can't have somehow two windows running separate transactions. It's a very strange use case. I don't know if there even is one, but it's worth mentioning. Okay. And so whereas with the new way, you can batch update records, the old way, you have to handle every record one at a time, right? You loop over, you set record, you set a field, or you delete a portal row. A lot of transactional scripting is done in portals. So hold on, here we go. Got a few script steps on the left side here that you can use for more traditional old school transactional scripting. The new way, you can use all that stuff, but you can also make a new record, delete that record. We're talking about the actual record on your layout, not through a relationship, not through a portal. You can import records, which just to fill in the implication there, that means that if you then revert your transaction later, you are reverting that import records, which is pretty significant. Same thing for replace field contents. There's never been a way to replace field contents, and there is now. Relookup field contents is another one, and there's a longer list. This is about half of it. These are the most significant ones, in my opinion, but there's actually a pretty significant list of record modification steps, including a lot of things you could not do transactionally before or had no way to revert before that now we do. So, sorry, I think I skipped all this. All right. So then in in 20.1 on window transaction trigger, this is a file option script trigger. It means it's available everywhere throughout the system. It's not window specific. It's not layout specific. This will automatically perform a script after committing a transaction, and it's going to automatically generate a JSON parameter to your script that has some basic metadata, file name, base table name, the operation as in new, edit, delete, the record ID, and you can define a field to include in this JSON parameter that has, whatever additional information you want. So long story short, this is a huge development in simplifying record logging, audit logs, recording record modification. And I've got an asterisk after that commit transaction because, in fact, this does not only fire after those scripted transactional processes that you have to build individually. With this step on, or excuse me, this script trigger on, this will actually fire for every kind of record modification, at least as far as I've been able to test. So new record, delete a record. It does not have to be through a script. It does not have to be through a transactional script. So, and it's modular, so you can apply it to different tables very simply. And then it's just about how your callback script or your trigger script is going to handle that parameter. So a lot of very significant heavy lifting, I would say, is done by these steps and these new native transactional functionality. I'm not convinced that it is correct for every use case, especially with very complex scripts. There are some, performance trade-offs, but all in all, it seems to me that there's a huge move toward making that kind of record modification logging much easier to set up, much more robust and complete. There's also, I didn't include them here, but there's been some very minor changes to the functionality of functions like get modified fields that basically help to complete the tool set to make sure that we can actually log record modification as completely as, certainly much more completely than we ever have before. Here's a little example. I run replace field contents. I get a script is called with this parameter. And I'm just going to break it down for those of you that maybe, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is an array of the records. So I did replace field contents on 4 records, and I got an array of 4 items. They all say that they were modified. That 1, 3, 4, 5 that shows up here, these are the record IDs. And then I defined a JSON field that has, whatever other field data that I want to record. And this will just fire every time I modify a record. So that takes me to the end of my personally very exciting recent developments. Does anybody want to share anything, have any comments about what I went over, or ways that you've used things, anything you're excited about? I yield the floor.
I know I'm always excited. Anybody else excited? Nobody wants to be excited. I know we didn't get into much depth of it, but Claris Connect and their custom connectors are always something that is near my heart of seeing how that evolves. I think we're waiting on one more feature, right? The ability to like parse out JSON, I think, from a custom connector, but I know once that happens, right, that that really changes the landscape of being able to create a custom connector and using Claris Connect to really automate things for a ton of use cases, right? Every single, in theory, right, API out there, if you give it an endpoint, boom, it just creates life out of it. So that excites me whenever that happens. And I know there's going to be a new version sometime soon. I know there's going to be a freemium coming sometime soon. They keep on talking about a freemium for FileMaker. I know we got free versions on Connect, free versions on Studio. All just continuing to expand the accessibility of the platform is important. So, any other developers here or want to share anything that's they're like, I love that. I was thinking of custom functions when you were talking about that file path thing, right? I mean, oh
Yeah,
my
I
goodness.
didn't realize that was in 19 because I completely forgot about it, and then need to do something for base elements. I was like, oh, that was neat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, how many hours we have spent trying to just Mac the Windows to test to right, like, oh my goodness, right? Relative path, full path, right? Crazy. No, good stuff. I appreciate everything, Mary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you folks for joining. We have determined a next event will be July 11th, also a Thursday, by the way, 6 p.m. same time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Again, we're going to focus on FileMaker and AI. If there is something, if you're shy to bring it up now, or you think about it, you sleep on it, and you're like, hey, you know what, this would be a really great event, or this is something that I'd like to see more of, please let us know. You can reach us at service@dbservices.com. And we will, we'd like to hear from you and hope to please do spread the word.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mary. Good job.
Thanks.